All right, let's tackle a question that feels like it's straight out of science fiction, but is now a very real engineering problem. Can we actually build an AI that truly feels something? I mean, genuine emotion. Let's get into it.
You know, if you've ever watched Star Trek, this quote from the android Lieutenant Commander Data just hits the nail on the head. His entire existence, his whole purpose, was this quest to understand and actually experience what it's like to be human, to feel. And man, what he found out was that it's an unbelievably tough journey.
And that difficulty? It's still very much with us today. Look, modern AI is incredible. It can mimic our emotions flawlessly. It can write a poem that makes you cry or generate a picture that just radiates joy. But to create an AI that genuinely feels that internal tug-of-war, that authentic inner conflict, that's still one of the absolute biggest mountains to climb in the entire field.
So to really get why, we've got to look at how we've tried to explain emotion in ourselves first. This is what you could call the android's dilemma. You just can't build something if you don't truly understand its blueprint.
Okay, so in the quest to figure this out, there are basically two big schools of thought. On one hand, you've got Antonio Damasio's body-first idea. He says our gut feelings, those physical, bodily signals, are what bubble up and tell our brain, hey, this is how you feel. But then on the other side, you've got Lisa Feldman-Barrett's brain-first theory, which says, no, our brain is the one in charge. It's actively predicting and constructing emotions to make sense of what's happening in our bodies.
But here's the problem. Both of these theories, for all their insights, kind of treat emotion like a one-way street. It's either your body telling your brain what's going on, or your brain telling your body how it should feel. What they really struggle with is explaining that seamless, constant, back-and-forth conversation between the two that we all experience literally every moment of our lives.
And this gets us to the real heart of the issue, what we can call the bidirectional control problem. Think about it. How can a totally abstract thought, like just imagining a public speech next week, suddenly make your heart pound and your palms sweat? And on the flip side, how can you use pure logic and reason to talk yourself down and calm that racing heart? That two-way traffic is exactly what these traditional theories have a hard time explaining.
This is where intelligence frame theory just changes the game completely. IFT comes in and says, hey, what if we're asking the wrong question? What if emotion isn't a feeling at all, but the predictable result of a structural collision inside our own heads? For those of us who follow IFT, we know its central idea is that human intelligence is a hybrid system. It's totally unique because it runs two completely different operating systems, or frames, an ancient, biological one, and a modern, cognitive one, at the exact same time. And when you have two different systems trying to drive the same car, well, you're going to get conflict. So here's the big leap from IFSC. Emotion isn't some mysterious feeling we have. It's what the theory calls a compression interface. You can think of it like a clever hack, a brilliant shortcut that evolved to manage the non-stop conflict between our two internal minds. It's a beautifully simple structural solution to a deep structural problem. Okay, so let's zoom in on these two minds, or frames, that are constantly clashing, creating that rich, messy, beautiful thing we call human emotion. Right, so we know this conflict is between our biological frame, that ancient animal core that's all about immediate survival, and our cognitive frame, our modern, symbolic brain that thinks in terms of long-term plans and abstract ideas. I mean, look at this. They run on totally different hardware, they have opposite goals, and they even experience time differently. A collision is basically inevitable. And when these two frames do clash, that's when emotion emerges. Just look at these examples. Fear, that's the biological frame's immediate run instinct colliding with the cognitive frame's abstract prediction of a future threat. It's a system override that buys you precious time. Guilt, that's the conflict between our ancient, hardwired social programming and our modern, symbolic idea of who I am. It's basically an internal course correction tool. Even something like love can be seen as the system resolving a conflict between the BF, which sees bonding as a huge energy drain, and the CF, which understands the massive long-term payoff of a stable partnership. So, if emotion is just a structural collision, that gives us a brand new playbook for building AI. Forget teaching a machine to fake a smile. What if we could actually engineer the conditions for a genuine inner conflict? This is a total paradigm shift, right? We stop obsessing over the output, the performance of an emotion, and we start building the underlying architecture that creates it in the first place. We can literally simulate the same kind of structural tension that generates emotion in us. So, how would we actually do this?
Well, you could build what IFT calls a dual frame simulation engine. It's actually pretty straightforward. Step 1, you create a software module that acts like a biological frame, driven by basic survival goals. Step 2, you create another one that acts like a cognitive frame with long-term abstract goals. Then you just let them run together and watch for when they disagree. When that conflict, that dissonance gets intense enough, the system spits out a heuristic, a quick and dirty rule of thumb that acts exactly like an emotion, forcing a resolution. And just look at the world of difference this approach makes. The typical data-driven AI, it has zero real understanding of why it feels a certain way. A frame-based engine, it understands the cause perfectly. It could even generate totally new emotions from new kinds of internal conflicts. Its feelings would be completely explainable. And, most importantly, it would treat emotion for what it is, a functional tool for solving problems, not just a mask to wear.
And here's the really amazing part. This isn't about brute force. We're not talking about building ever larger models and feeding them more and more data. This is about elegant, intelligent design. Simulating this kind of structural conflict would be computationally cheap, almost trivial, compared to the massive brute force training methods we're using right now.
So what does all this mean for us, for our future? Well, creating AI that is truly emotionally intelligent could be one of the most profound shifts in technology we've ever seen. It changes everything.
Just imagine it. Robots that can provide elder care, not just by lifting things, but by truly understanding the conflict that creates loneliness. Or AI assistants that get why you're stressed because they recognize the clash between your short-term pressures and your long-term ambitions. We could build social companions that can form real friendships with us because they actually get our internal struggles on a structural level.
When you really think about it, an AI that understands the structure of our inner conflict, that constant tug-of-war between our biological wiring and our cognitive dreams, could become the most deeply helpful and empathetic partner humanity has ever had. It wouldn't just be faking empathy, it would be built from the ground up on the very same architecture. Which brings us to one last, really big question to leave you with. If an AI's emotion isn't just a clever copy of data it's seen, but it's an emergence property of a genuine, engineered, structural conflict inside its own system, how can we say it isn't real? Is its feeling really any different from our own? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.